One of the most hyped players in the history of high school basketball was Emoni Bates. He was called the 15-year-old Kevin Durant. His skill so legendary, LeBron James gave him advice after an AAU game. I mean, LeBron was on the cover of Sports Illustrated at 17 years old. Emoni did it at 15. SI said he is the future of the NBA. Not even old enough to drive and likely to be a straight to the NBA #1 pick. Well, now, Emoni Bates may not even make the league. What happened is fascinating, but it's also a warning to every other young player trying to make the league. Bates was already on the radar as a 7th grader. He was 6'7" at 13 years old. Obviously, he would beat every 13-year-old on the planet, but by 15, he added the dribbling and the shooting that made people compare him to KD. Bates became the first sophomore to win Gatorade Player of the Year while he was playing at Lincoln High School. The hype was so big, his dad wanted to take control. He created a school called Yipsy Prep, centered around his son. 12 students, all teammates, taking online classes in a rented building outside of town. They were all coached by Emoni's summer ball coach and had a schedule playing some of the best teams in the US. People called Emoni's dad the next LeVar Ball, which could be a good thing or a horrible thing depending on who you ask. The real questionable decision was for Emoni to skip his senior year of high school. He was playing AAU for the first time at 16 years old, and other players were starting to catch up. It looked like Emoni might be a little overhyped when he played against better competition. Then a kid named Jalen Duren passed him as the #1 recruit. He decided to skip senior year, so Emoni joined him at the same college, Memphis. The problem is Emoni was 17 years old. You have to be 19 to enter the NBA draft. So while Jalen became a lottery pick after one semester, Emoni has to stay in school. And once he got to Memphis, it was obviously a mistake. The first red flag was his measurements. His hands were small, his wingspan was 6'7¼ inches. That's not good when you're 6'9". His vertical, 24.5 inches. Tom Brady had a 24.5 inch vertical, and pro scouts said he was unathletic for football. But fans were like, all right, this isn't a huge deal. Look, he's super skilled, he has time. Then the game started. Emoni averaged 7 points on awful efficiency and made no one better. And look, I guess those numbers are decent for a 17-year-old in college, but not for a potential #1 pick. The Tigers got off to a horrible 11-8 start when Emoni went down with a back injury. And people were like, oh yeah, typical, obviously he's gonna quit the team, he's just gonna leave, face some adversity. But no, Emoni showed back up to support his guys who were taking off without him. Memphis became one of the best teams in the country without Emoni Bates. They only lost 2 games the rest of the year and made the NCAA tournament. Now, Emoni briefly returned in March Madness, but the year was a disaster. Emoni then quit school and announced he would transfer for his final year of college. But one report said he was actually kicked off the team. Rumors said Emoni told recruits not to go play for his coach Penny Hardaway at Memphis. Emoni probably blamed Penny for his struggles. I mean, he missed training camp, he was just 17 years old, but Penny started him day 1 anyway. But Emoni had a list of 6 schools to transfer to, including some huge programs, but he chose Eastern Michigan. Yes, it gave him a chance to play back near home, but are we even sure any of those big schools wanted him? And the real question here is, what happened? How did a no-doubt top pick fall to a 2nd rounder at best? Emoni still would have time to improve his draft spot, but right now he's a long shot. I believe there are several people to blame. I will name them, but not Penny Hardaway. Yes, he played Emoni quick, but he was pressured after the #1 player chose his school. I point the finger at anyone who compares a 15-year-old to Kevin Durant. I mean, even if a young kid is talented, those comps will kill his career. Anything he does will be looked on as a failure. Andrew Wiggins is a perfect example. Remember he was compared to LeBron in college? Well, that stuck with him years into his NBA career. Instead of just appreciating what Andrew Wiggins brings to the game, everyone was like, well, you told me he would be the GOAT. Now imagine that happening to a 15-year-old kid on Sports Illustrated. I mean, maybe at like the barbershop, but not the national media. Anything Emoni did after that was a disappointment, unless he is KD. That's not fair, and it's a lot of pressure. One of the few guys that I've seen actually pull all this off is Zion Williamson, and even he is facing a lot of heat. The other person that comp affected was Emoni's dad, EJ. The spotlight went right to his head. He told Sports Illustrated, you know, sometimes players just go with the flow, not really setting themselves up for generational wealth. If Emoni's in that position, I want to make sure he is in control with everything he does. Okay, dude, the words generational wealth should never be mentioned when your kid is 15 years old. Dad got money signs in his eyeballs, and right when things got tough at AAU ball, he pulled his kid out of Lincoln and just created his own school. Then they skipped college, which set Emoni up to fail at 17 years old. But this isn't all other people's fault. There are red flags around Emoni's attitude. I mean, the rumors about him getting kicked off Memphis aren't good, but in high school, a fight he had got a lot of attention. A teammate named Jaden Akins got upset at Emoni on the court, like teammates do, and the two had words. But instead of squashing it, Yipsy Prep just kicked Akins off the team. The kid had to scramble to find another school before college, but people wondered if this was an example of Yipsy being so focused on just Emoni. Instead of dealing with adversity, they just expelled anyone who causes a problem for Mr. Bates. Now the good news is Emoni is still projected to be an NBA player. He is an early second-round pick by the Orlando Magic in ESPN's latest mock. That is amazing for any normal kid. A nightmare for the so-called #1 pick though. I just hope that he can find a way to be grateful for the NBA dream. The worst example of an overhyped player falling from grace was Todd Marinovich. His dad wanted Todd to be an NFL player so bad, he started training him as an infant right out of the crib. Now, it worked at first. He became a star quarterback in high school, recruited by every major college, but he chose his dad's alma mater, USC. Showed real promise, but he had behavioral issues that led him to leave school early. Even then, the NFL drafted him in the first round. But only 2 years into his career, it was done after failing multiple drug tests. Todd is still a mess at 52 years old, and people wonder how much his childhood had to do with it. Now, I'm not saying Emoni Bates is the next Todd Marinovich at all. My point is, nothing good happens when a super young player is cursed with Hall of Fame expectations. By the way, I mentioned Jalen Duren, who passed Emoni in the high school rankings right before college. They both went to Memphis together. Jalen Duren just made himself a lottery pick. He went to the Detroit Pistons, and that's one of the reasons I gave Detroit an A in the draft. Check out the rest of my draft grades right here.